You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fire play education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fire play. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, amazing fire starters. Welcome back to our podcast. It's a very bright 1 a.m. for me in Cape Town, South Africa, and you're speaking to Miss Kitten. I'm very excited to have B and Chain Links joining me from Alberta, Canada. Welcome, ladies, and thank you so much for your time and for chatting to me today.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. Hi, everyone. I'm B.
Hi, I'm Chain Links.
Hi, thank you, Chain Links. Thank you, B. It's really great to have you ladies here. And you're coming on to Rain of Fire for us, and you're going to do some exciting things with wax. Before we start to get into the whole wax kink, let's just give our listeners a little bit of a brief description of your journey and how you went from normal muggle life to being in the dark and beautiful world of BDSM. So maybe B, you want to go first for me and just tell us how your journey started and how you ended up in this position.
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. So, I actually, strangely, I had a hard time getting into kink because I was, of course, very nervous, like most people. But also, more importantly, I identified more with asexuality. And for me, I was very nervous that I wasn't welcome in the kink community because it always seemed like a sex thing. So boom, I actually took the jump. I ended up in the kink community. I met this absolutely amazing lady called Chain Links. She's pretty cool. And we became good friends. And then I don't know, we one day suddenly realized during the pandemic that we can't just do board games. Obviously, we can't just do that. So instead, we decided, hey, why don't we do something for the kinky people we know and love? And we made Wax Ecstatic. And it's been a pretty amazing journey so far.
That sounds so cool. I'm very excited to hear more about Wax Ecstatic, but I'm going to let Chain Links give us her little muggle journey story, and then we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, so I joined the kink scene because I thought that I was a dom, and so I got myself a sub within approximately 24 hours of joining FetLife. Realized very quickly that was a disaster. Killer B is probably laughing her ass off right now because I'm the farthest thing from a dom you could possibly imagine. And but I love everything else there is to do with the kink, aside from the DS piece. And one of the things that I love is wax. And so when I was looking around trying to figure out how I can make some extra cash, I was like, hey, a lot of the candles that are out there are dangerous.
They're terrible.
So So I'm like, Killer B, you are a genius when it comes to color. Do you want to go into business with me? So as she graciously said yes, and thus our legend was born.
And
I
now
love
here
that.
we are.
And here you are, and you're coming to show us all on Rain of Fire how beautiful your product is and how much fun you can have playing with it. I absolutely adore wax. We also play with it as a group, and we also had the same issue. The candles that we were buying were more like acid rain than fun play candles. So we also went on the whole journey to find better products, which is difficult where we live, and expensive, and it's not always easy to get the colors that you want either. Some of them still stain and still aren't body safe in our shopping and our available shopping community. So we've also had a bit of a journey. So tell me a little bit about what wax you are using and why you're using this wax and what makes it different to your average candle that you'd buy from a supermarket.
Yeah, so we did a lot of research before we settled on paraffin. You can either go with soy or paraffin. Stay away from beeswax, for the love of God. Beeswax will scar you. But you can go with soy or paraffin. The advantage of soy is that it is a natural product, and some people like that. Paraffin is a synthetic product. It's made of petroleum. Because soy is a natural product, it has natural variations to the temperature. And so you can get one batch and be like, oh, this is delicious. And then you get another batch and it's way hotter. And you'll be like, why? What is this?
Nobody enjoys nuclear wax play. That's what we realized. That was the big thing.
Right, like some of them are like acid rain. Like some of them are just really unpleasant. We've used the wrong candles at a birthday celebration. We did 100 candles in the backs of needles, and we lit them all up. And 10 of the candles were standing candles because we'd broken some of them, and they were pure frigging acid rain. And I have a friend that has a penis. A wax-shaped penis on her leg from where these candles dripped, and she's now a one-cock family. She's never going to have another experience like that again. So the wrong candle definitely can leave you hating the experience completely. So I'm with you.
God,
with you.
That's
it's
horrendous.
So
That's awful.
And we know better. We know better. We know to test our product. We know to be prepared. So, it does happen. But the other candles were divinely nice. But the last 10 that we put in were just absolutely fucking awful. So, definitely, I'm with you. I'm with you on the nuclear. Nobody likes nuclear wax. We use quite a bit. We use paraffin and soy mixed together as a combination.
In the hand.
Yeah.
And...
the soy. Sorry.
Oh, so sorry. My internet connection is unstable. 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. My internet. Okay,
I'm so sorry.
My internet connection is always unstable. Don't panic. Carry on. Tell me a little bit more about the soy. I think you were telling me it melts in the hand.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. So it's quite funny because we'll be vending candles and we'll ask people, have you tried wax before? And sometimes the reaction is, yeah, I didn't like it. And we'll be like, but have you tried our candles? And the reason is because we buy paraffin that is as low temperature as you can get without it melting in your hands. And then we will add color, which will raise the temperature a little bit, but not very much. And it's literally as low temperature as you can possibly make it, which is wonderful because that means you can get really, really precise and really, really close to the skin. You can literally hold the candles right next to the skin without it burning, which is not something you can say about any candle. Because unlike, birthday candles, which have scarred more than a few people I know, our candles are actually body safe. So that is why we decided to choose paraffin.
Being body safe is kind of important when we're lighting them and pouring them all over our bodies. It seems like a really low bar, doesn't it?
It does, and I think people like to underestimate how much damage you can do by putting the wrong product into wax. And it's got to be the colors and the glitter and everything are fantastic, but if they're not body safe, you really can have a reaction, or it can also raise the temperature, or it can also stain the skin. Again, this is from personal experience. We really battled to find black colorant that was body safe that didn't stain the skin. So we haven't managed to make a decent black candle.
Yes, black is a difficult color to actually work with because it is the absolute absence of light. Right. So when we're working with black, it has to basically absorb all the light around it, unlike, white that reflects it. That's why it's bright versus dark. So when you're trying to play with blacks and things, you have to put so much freaking dye into it that sometimes you get a little bit nervous about it staining skin or being too hot. So it's a very, very delicate balance to make it perfect. That is for sure. And I'm saying that with this, so much experience. It took us 6 months to make black. It took forever.
We haven't put our black candles on the market. We're going to do a piece with them for Rain of Fire, just a demo piece. And we have some black that has emerged after ours is about 8 months of trial and error. So it'll be interesting to see how this batch runs. But I'm so with you. If there's not enough color in it, it doesn't come out black. If there's too much color in it, it comes out black acid rain. There's sort of varying degrees of black, and none of them are perfect. Yeah.
No. And the funny thing is too, as well. So a lot of people will notice that you'll purchase a black candle, let's say. And if it is actually going to drop as like a pure, beautiful black, it's probably going to leave you with a pure, beautiful scar because it is so hot. It's so hot.
Oh, so it's instead... It's a gift that keeps on giving, and you wear your black. Black wax. You wear your black wax mark for either it's a scar or you keep the color in your body for sort of six or 7 days after the experience.
My God. Absolutely not. That's not acceptable. So one of the things we found with that is that obviously, there was a lot of precision that had to go into it. If you do 1/8 of a teaspoon too much of our dye, you'll end up with staining. So it's a very, very precise process. But even though it took a long time, we eventually got there, and we're really proud of it. Finally.
I'm proud of your black because I know how long it took us to come up with a black creation, and I'm quite sure the black that we've got is still going to leave a black mark afterwards. I think there's enough dye in that candle to support a small community for 6 months. Tell me a little bit more about how you actually play with wax and the intention of the play, and how you find joy in the experience.
I think one of the most amazing.
I actually got into wax because I was into Sharps originally. That's how I entered the community, was Sharps, and a dear friend of mine was into rope, and so we were looking at each other, going, "You're a dear friend of mine, but we are never ever going to play," because she loved the sensuousness of rope and the connection, and I loved the artistic piece and the precision of Sharps, and but I hated the finickiness and the high entry level of rope. And so we were just like, we're never ever going to play together because there's no kink that has the artistic piece, the precision, the sensuousness, the connection, but doesn't have the high entry level of all of those things. And then we realized wax. It has all of those, but it's really, really easy to get into. And so that's actually how I started playing with wax, was because it is artistic. It is connective. It is sensuous. It is endlessly creative. But it's so easy to get into. It's an entry level kink. We go to sex conferences that are primarily vanilla, and the vanillas are just so tickled by wax because it's not threatening to get into. It's not like whips. You don't have
I agree with your non-threatening. I do know from doing a lot of wax topping that people mustn't underestimate the play, and that for me, wax is still edge play, and that it still evokes a huge range of emotions from the bottom, and that it can still be hugely intense. So looking at it from that point of view, are there certain negotiations that come to mind before a play, and are there sort of certain things that you share with players before they have the experience?
Well, certainly you have to mention that although even our candles are quite low temperature, scarring or burns, it's always possible. You're playing with fire. You're literally playing with fire. And so you do need to be aware that it is possible no matter how careful you are. And people need to consent to that.
I have multiple scars on my arm now from testing candles that were failed batches that we couldn't save. So, I mean, it's when we say that our candles are very low temperature, they absolutely are. But we have had batches that have failed because that's part of the learning process. And I will say those failures do sometimes make their mark.
And I also think it's important to remind people that wax may have a low melting temperature, but if you keep adding heat to the wax, it'll keep absorbing the heat. So if you're not using them as lit candles and you're doing them, we do a lot with a pour, and you're not keeping constant eye on your temperature in your wax bath, you can add your own heat to it and you can still make a burn. So it's also dependent on the process that you're using to heat them and how you're controlling that process. It's hugely important.
Oh,
absolutely.
It's so funny you say that. I had I covered someone in wax. Actually, just recently, I covered my partner in wax after we suspended him in rope. We did a full body encasement in wax, and to do that, we used kilograms of wax in a crock pot, and we heated up the wax, and I didn't pay attention to the temperature of the wax. And so, like the good top that I am, I just scooped a bunch out and dumped it on my arm to test the temperature, and promptly burned the shit out of my arm because it was very, 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 very hot. And I am staring at the scabs right now. So you really have to be careful with pores to monitor those crock pots very, very carefully, because man, that wax can get hot.
Yes.
Try and keep your crock pots at low, everybody, because we have had this issue before. And I think a lot of people have, right? When you go to the salon and get a pedicure, they often use a paraffin wax on your feet, right? It's a little upsell. But sometimes when they do that, oh my God, it's awful putting your feet in there. And so making sure that you're playing low is actually really, really important. We don't need to make things volcanic to make.
I keep hearing about, every time I interview anybody from Canada or America, they keep telling me about this amazing experience you can have at the salon by having your feet dipped in paraffin wax, and we just don't get that. So I'm really jealous. Like, it's something that I would definitely upsell. And I googled it after the last podcast where we were actually talking about cigars, and she was like, "It's so nice to have your feet dipped in wax and then go and smoke a cigar afterwards, and you feel so relaxed." I was like, I just feel jealous. Like, that's just not an option in my life.
That sounds like heaven. I'm 100% into this. Also, very small note. Jenny did. So, Chain Links had mentioned at the beginning of this intro for herself that she thought she was a dom right away. Well, I didn't think that about myself, but I am. So I have to say that if I were having my feet dipped into paraffin wax while having a cigar, very importantly, with a slave acting as an ashtray, I am not going to lie. That's heaven.
Hey,
That's what
right?
it looks like for me. That is it. I
Right?
have a new idea of what heaven is. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
I'm
for
gonna
sharing that.
another slave on the other side holding my coffee cup. Like I could just do that. That could really work for me. Our salons do provide really good coffee, so at least we get some decent coffee. But I need to find a place who does the wax. We absolutely, one of my favorite things to do with wax. I have a switchy sister who we play with quite a bit. She's a wax queen. She absolutely loves it, and she does all the tastings at our local events. But I love to wax her feet. I love to do paws on her feet. It's my absolute best because she's got to sit super fucking still while I pour the wax on. And all she wants to do is giggle and wriggle and move her feet. And she can't. And she has, so it's just like almost like it's bondage, but not quite bondage. And it's sort of self bondage because she's got to stay absolutely still on her own. And I just love pouring layers of beautiful colors onto these gorgeous feet. And then
Oh my goodness.
And then taking a cane and bastinadoing it off and spanking it off. And
you are my kind of person, Ms. Kitten, I gotta say.
Oh, and the giggles that you get from it is just absolutely amazing. And I have to say, yeah.
I just want to give you a small maybe thought. It's just something that you can maybe think on to add into that, which is, have you ever thought about lighting some smaller candles, putting them between her toes, pointed above her feet while her feet are arched?
Ooh, that's a great plan. And I have
because then there's no control. There's no control. That's the best part. I can't stop it. I'm not holding it. Sweetheart, you are.
I absolutely love that. I just wanted to go back to the paw and say to the listeners, the one thing in my experience with the paw is that the heat transfers quite quickly through the wax. So as you're adding new layers, the bottom layer of the wax is reheating up. So it's quite important for me in a paw that the body is prepared with no oils, with nothing underneath, nothing that can keep absorbing layers and layers and layers of heat. We've had quite bad burns from people coming to us that have lotion on, where we've done kilograms of paws on top of that. So we've learned through experience that the less on the body, the better. I don't know how you guys have found that experience or what your experience with that is.
One thing I'd like to say is that often it's not the lotions, it's not the oils or anything. It's actually the fragrances. Fragrances are incredibly caustic to the skin. So if you heat them and then pour them, they can be absolutely volcanic. And that's why, as well, you never want to use a candle that has fragrances in it, things from Bath and Body Works, stuff like that, Yankee candles. So I would say if you're going to do a wax scene, you can always throw down a little bit of coconut oil on the skin. But if you're going to be doing like one of those, huge pours like Chain Links did with an encasement scene, you might want to start, small, especially if somebody's hairy. Doing a little bit of a oil layer is kind of nice when somebody's really fluffy.
I'm a total sadist. I disagree with you completely. I quite like the fact that they have body hair and I'm going to yank it out at the end. There's sort of like a small amount of pleasure that I get from the experience of then pulling the wax off at the end. But that's just a personal. That's just
what? For me personally, I work in the beauty industry. That sounds like work to me. That sounds like going to my job. No.
Fair enough.
On the other hand,
fair enough.
On the other hand, I'd love to watch them pull it out. It's not my problem, darling. That's yours.
That's a great tip there. I'm definitely going to incorporate that and then clean the floor.
Absolutely. First of all, don't make a mess in my home. How dare you? You're a guest.
Glitter, wax is like the glitter of the kink community. Like when you go to events that host often, you know that they're kink events because there's sort of wax bits like left in every corner of the venue. Our local dungeon definitely grumps when they see us coming with our plastics and our water baths and our wax because they know their carpet's never going to be the same. And it doesn't matter how much protection you put down, you're going to leave a mark somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And having shower curtain liners is a game changer because it doesn't stick to the skin, which means when people sit up, they're not pulling the plastic with them, and then they're not scattering wax all the way to high heaven.
Oh, that's a great tip. I'm definitely going to use that. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Chainlinks, about your encasement. We've done it once where we did a full mummification with bandages, and then we put the wax over the bandages. We actually got 2 pig's hearts, and we put a pig's heart on the chest with nails through it and the whole lot, which was really fun to do.
I love that.
We had some interesting experiences with doing the wax over the bandages. We obviously tested it a bit beforehand, probably not enough, but the bandages definitely shrunk from the wax, which made the mummification really super interesting because the whole mummification tightened over the body.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so the whole thing became quite an encasement because it shrunk all the top wrapping. So we figured out we needed to put a fair amount of wrapping on to compensate for that, so it wasn't the bottom layer that was shrinking. But I'm quite interested to know with your suspension how you managed to keep him that still to avoid the cracks in the paw, and how much wax did it take to put over that whole body?
Yeah, so we ended up using, I think it was about 4 kilograms of wax, all said and done. But 500 grams of that, so 0.5 kilograms of that was purely aesthetic. That was 3.5 kilograms of wax to fully encase him, and he's a big guy. And that we did with mainly by brushing it on with paintbrushes. If you were to pour it on, we found that it made really nice runnels and nice patterns, but it wasn't very effective for full coverage. So if you were to try to pour it on, you would need way more wax than what we used for sure. And so we covered just his bottom half or his bottom quarter all along his back. And then I suspended him and I did, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, a 4-point suspension, just to keep him really still and stable and secure. And that way, it was sustainable for the guy because he was up for 54 minutes while we painted on the wax. And also that way it kept him from moving too much, so he didn't start shaking during the process. And that way we didn't have too many cracks to deal with. Now, there were some cracks. And then when we poured on the aesthetic wax, we also had UV orange. We do a UV line as well. So we did UV orange as on top of it. And the cracks were very cool because that gave an added layer of sensation and an added layer of fun to the scene, which was a lot of quite neat to see.
Okay, that's a fair amount of wax. We've done some pours. I think the most we've done is 11 kilograms of wax in a pour.
Holy moly!
Yeah, and it got super heavy. And then we've done some self pours where we've just handed the model the wax and she's poured them down over herself, which was a really interesting experience for the model, but I think we did about 6 kgs of wax in that paw. But the cracks can be an issue, or we found that the cracks can be an issue if your layers are too thick and you start to get a top layer that penetrates right underneath. You can definitely cause a burn. So it does, when you're doing these big paws, it is important to remember that the risk elevates with the amount of wax that you're using, and that you can cause a burn, because we have.
Yes. And you're more likely to experience fatigue when you have, 11 kilograms of wax on a person, right? They're more likely to experience fatigue. So it's also more likely that they're going to start slumping and creating cracking as well. So I could definitely see that being an issue, creating kind of little spots where you can sneak underneath the wax and put a whole new extra hot layer.
Yeah, and I think you underestimate how much the positioning becomes important, and how much the positioning needs to have longevity and secure the model. So it's interesting to hear Chain Links talk about the suspension for 2 reasons. First of all, I'm not a rigger, and none of my riggers want to lend me any rope or tie for any of my artistic pieces, because I love to cause a mess. And apparently rope is very special and difficult to clean, and my riggers are very anti my play dates, because we like to get messy in my house. So I can just see my rigger turning in his grave thinking about the fact that I'm going to paw over his rope. So I don't know whose rope you use, but my rigger wouldn't let that happen. But it was interesting to hear about how you supported that body, because I think that is a huge issue. On all the paws we've done, we've had to stop at the end because the position was got to the point of being the first thing to give out. Before the person's body had too much wax, they couldn't hold the position any longer.
Well, it's interesting that you say about the rope, because we actually just bought synthetic rope from Home Depot. It was $40 worth of rope for 8 lengths. And that's what we used for the harnesses. And then we used Posh rope for the uplines. And it was very secure. It was fine for the suspension. I double checked with people that I trust, but it was absolutely fine to use synthetic rope for the suspension. And because it was only $40, we felt no guilt in cutting it off afterwards and getting him out of that suspension and out of the harnesses quickly so that he could rest. So this is
also the part where I mentioned that Chain Links is an incredible rigger. If this were up to me, that person would honestly be tied up with granny knots, and I'm not ashamed. I'm not good at it. I'm sorry.
I'm with you, B. If that was up to me, they would be wrapped in plastic and suspended off plastic, because it was much easier than using rope, or I would have hired somebody to do the job. I'm not ashamed to admit that rope is not my kink. I have huge admiration for anybody that can do it and that is committed to it, but it's just not part of my skill set. In fact, after 10 years of kink, I still have to go onto YouTube to Google how to do a single column tie every time I tie it. So every one of my single column ties is a new version. So I have no shame there.
I am really seeing myself reflected to me right now, because every time I have ever mentioned to anyone that I'm horrible at rope, they're like, "Oh, it's super easy to learn." I'm like, no, it's not. You know why? Because I've learned a double column tie 47 times, and guess what? I still don't know how to do it.
Right? And I still
don't know.
I keep going to these classes and paying this money, and I sit down and I have my bag of rope, and the rope looks used because it's now 10 years old, and I take out the piece and they're expecting miracles, and then they do the first column tie and I'm like, oh, do that again and do it again and do it one more time and just one more time. Just help me. Where does this go? Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. But I think that rope and wax are really two kinks that lend themselves together really well. Did the rope shrink when you put the wax on it? Did you find that the rope shrunk on the body at all?
Well, I think if we had used natural fibers, it might have, but because it was synthetic, we didn't. The bottom did get some pretty nasty rope burn, and we think that the synthetic fibers transferred heat, because his rope burn had a little bit of bubbling to it that we think was some heat transfer. But he healed fabulously well from it, so he's fine now. But so that is something that someone needs to rack if they were to do something similar.
So interesting. That's such an interesting take on it. I wouldn't
Synthetic
even
fibers
thought
transfer
about
heat,
that.
but no, there was yeah. So that was really, really interesting for sure.
And then I know that you are also still doing needles, and I always try and put needles into the fire podcast because it's my main love. I'm wondering if you've used wax over needles.
You know what? I haven't, because for me, it's not within my risk basket. I would be worried about fragments getting drawn under skin, and that to me is not a thing that I would be willing to do. But I have certainly seen it done. I know of a few people on FetLife who've done it, and it does look fabulous for sure.
We've done it, and I've done it to myself. I always feel like as a top that I need to know what it feels like, and I have to tell you, you need to try it. We mitigated the risk a little bit by keeping the wax away from the points of the needles. So what we found with the experience was that the skin has such a heightened sensitivity that you don't actually need to put it directly over the needles. You can put it around the area. So if you have a look at where the needle goes in, you sort of get that like red reaction around the skin a little bit. And if you put the wax anywhere on there, it's super sensitive. So it's a really incredible feeling. So I definitely do advise it. And I think there are ways to mitigate the risk of the wax going through the skin when you take out the needles.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate that. I might have to play with that. That sounds fun.
It's
yeah,
super,
I love that.
It's super intense. What we found with it is if you space the needles a bit, so if you do a bit like chaos needles all over the body down the one side, and then move the wax about 10 centimeters from that and do the wax all the way down the body, you can give a really good sensory play with it. And you don't need a lot of wax. You just need a couple of drips. They're really intense, and the response from the bottom is insane. It's really quite cool. So I definitely recommend giving that a shot.
Oh, sweet. I have ideas already. I'm definitely going to be playing with that. That's fabulous.
And then using other mediums with your wax, is there something that you guys enjoy? We use body safe paint, and then we paint a picture and we wax over it. Are there other things that you guys do with wax?
Well, I've been experimenting with painting with wax itself, and that is a lot of fun. It's different than painting with paint, but you can do some really cool things with it. And the sensation for the bottom is really, really neat just from the heat. So that's actually a lot of fun. And that's something that I'm going to be highlighting in a seminar with Rain of Fire.
Yay! I'm excited to see that. We haven't painted with wax, so that's definitely something I would also like to try. I had another wax question, and now it's escaped my brain. Sorry.
If I could just jump in, I like using wax for predicament play.
Yeah, your toe thing really got my brain working. I love that.
Yeah,
tell me a bit more about that.
I love challenges of the human body. I think that's half the fun of kink. I feel like it's a sport more than anything else. So
I love you, B. I absolutely love you. Like, I think like you're my kindred soul. Like, like I love extremes.
I am feeling the same.
You've just ticked all the boxes. Just saying it's a sport and you love challenges. I'm so with you.
I love to make kink kind of a sport, especially because if we think about it in the mindset of like martial arts, right? I used to do martial arts when I was a kid, and I guarantee to you, my favorite part wasn't just getting kicked in the face. It was 100% the exchange. And I think that is very transferable to kink and the way we live our lives. And I love using wax in predicaments. Having a bottom be a chandelier or for a pool game, or having a person forced to hold lit candles for a high protocol dinner. It's just, I don't know, it adds an element to a scene that you're already excited to do. And I think that's what's so fun about it, is that it's really open to just do whatever you want.
I think you've just opened a whole like fire is the one kink that really shouldn't be done in the living room. It's kind of that kink that you want to do in a safer space. But what you're just talking about now is a great way to bring fire into your house and have fire in the living room or on the living room table as a chandelier. I'm looking at my lounge table at the moment, and it would really look beautiful. With my pony is quite small in size and stature, so he would just fit beautifully on the lounge table with a whole bunch of candles balanced on top of him, and have to lie really still for hours while I don't know, do some needlework or just sit and watch him suffer, or something like that. That's very pleasant.
Now I have to say, this is what I want from cottagecore. This is what I want.
Right?
I want ponies suspended off of ceilings, lit on fire. That's cottagecore to me now. If you show me how to make bread, I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
I completely feel that. Like you're just not tapping into the right market with your bread maker anymore, unless the guy's wearing 9-inch heels and making bread in the kitchen. That is different. I'll send you some baking pictures that are more in line with what I like to see.
Excellent.
And then a removal of the wax. How do we get this stuff off? What are your tricks of the trade? And is there anything that you advise for the folks that are listening?
Ooh, well, we have a very special system. Chain Links came up with this, and it's genius. Do you want to let them know? It seems like they cut out. So we'll just skip over that. But we actually know a local fabulous craft person, and they offered to make us some absolutely beautiful wooden knives. They are sharp, even so, but they are made out of wood. And Canadians do be crafty. That's how that goes. They're really all just like pioneers.
I love that. So I'm using the knife to scrape it off. I have a selection of really beautiful Damascus steel cleavers.
We love a Damascus blade.
I know, but I've had all the blades blunted because they were super sharp, and you can't spank somebody with an actual blade. Well, you can,
but the scene's going to be short. It's going to be short because now we got to go to the ER.
Yeah, you're only going to do it once, and it's all that like personal responsibility that comes with it. So I had them blunted. It killed the top who blunted my knives, but they are super. And what I do is I freeze them, and then I use those to take the wax off. And then they're quite nice because you can spank the wax off as well, or you can scrape it off. And the spanking the wax off is amazing if you're doing it in somebody else's house. I don't love that so much for my own house. My medical room's quite nice and neat and tidy, so I prefer it not to happen in there. But yeah, that's quite fun. But I love the wooden knife idea. I think that's really a brilliant plan.
Well, the wonderful thing about the wooden knife too is, and people do love it. We go to local sex conferences or to local sexy trade shows and things like that. And when we use the knife, people really do understand the sensation of knife play and why people love it. But it is kind of allowing a little bit more kind of, not being as focused. It's not one where you have to be super, super cautious. It is very helpful for maybe players who are not as heavy duty as some others.
I love that, and it gives them a different experience.
Exactly. I mean, when you are going for, a straight razor shave, if you're a person who grows a beard, if you're a person going for a straight razor shave, the apprentice might have a safety. They might have a safety guard on their blade, but your master stylist doesn't, right? So allowing people to still play and do amazing things while adding a little bit of safety, not a bad thing.
Oh no, I think the safety is great, and I think also from what my experience with wax is, it's generally chaos, and by the time you're starting to take it off, it's even more chaos, and you've been doing the chaos for a while. So having the safety precautions when you're a little bit tired and you all a little bit giggly and you're all at the end of the day is a great plan. I think I definitely relate to that, and I think a wooden knife is a great idea. I also think it's better than getting wax on my Damascus steel knives. Just cleaning them is not my favorite thing in the world.
A wooden knife is it's almost disposable. A Damascus, you want to take care of it. I understand what you mean by that. Also, I mean, truthfully, at the end of a wax scene, you all have champagne brain, as you were saying. And by the time that you're done that, everyone's giggling and rolling around and everything else. And if you put that knife down for a second, rolling over a wooden knife, not that bad. Rolling over a steel knife potentially could be a little bit more dangerous. So
100%. I like the champagne brain thing. I think that is very cute. And it's exactly how the end of the wax always feels. Like you're always giddy. It doesn't matter if you've topped or bottomed for the scene, you're always giddy and you always yeah, I think I've done so much wax play that it's now that the last 5 minutes of the scene now fill me with anxiety because I know that I've got to clean up. But I'm liking your shower curtain idea. I'm definitely going to steal that. I think that's a great addition. And a wooden blade. I think I'm definitely going to steal that one as well. I had a look at Chain Link's profile. You have a couple of photographs where you've done wax on a face. That was super awesome. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was really fun. And we're going to be doing a lot more of that, actually. We have plans, but the trick is always finding the time. Very fun. Obviously, you want to have eye protection, but the face is the face is so sensitive, and it adds an element of fear play to it, because there's always a flinch response that people have to try to fight. So it's really, really fun. And you can do a lot of really interesting things, mask work, and if you get a nice red candle, you can play with blood, the appearance of blood. You can do all sorts of really fun things. So it's really, really neat. We're going to do a whole Halloween series for October this year. We've got plans for it, so keep an eye out for that.
Yay. I've had it on my face once. We did a needle scene in the garden, and then we put some wax over my cheeks, and it wasn't what I expected it to be. It was quite soothing, and it wasn't harsh. It was quite gentle, and it was an experience that was I expected it to be shocking and to but it wasn't. It was quite comforting and soothing, and it just added some joy to the play and made it look like my eyes were bleeding, which added to the pictures as well. And I just really enjoyed the experience. But having the flame come to my face, I can definitely relate to what you're saying about the fear play. And it was just, even though I had a blindfold on, it was super sort of invigorating to know that the top was that close to me, and I found it incredibly intimate and quite special. So but I definitely didn't go to the point where I had waxed somebody's mouth closed, but now that I've seen that on your profile, it's definitely on my bucket list, and I need to try that just for science, just once.
Oh, so
Jane Blanks loves to close lips. It's what she do. She's sewn mouths shut. She's stapled them shut. She's waxed them shut. And you know what? I love her for it. It's amazing. It's genuinely incredible.
Okay, tell me, I know this is a fire podcast, but tell me about sewing a mouth closed.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. I enjoy sewing people's mouths shut and then making them try to communicate with a whiteboard, and then taking that whiteboard away and watching them try to mime their way through the night. It's really, really fun, especially when people steal the whiteboard and write messages on it, like switches are fake, and then because I myself am a switch, and then they have to show me that switches are fake. It's really quite funny, because people get them into all sorts of trouble. So it's really good fun.
What is
We love a scene where the entire dungeon turns against one person who trusted us. What a time.
So what I'm hearing from this conversation is that I'm not speaking to two doms at the moment. I'm actually speaking to two brats who have discovered how to brat without being caught bratting.
Okay, so I have a very unpopular stance, but I guarantee it's a real stance I have, which are all tops are brats. They just are
100%.
also wusses and don't want to get hit.
Hell yeah.
Definitely,
100%.
I definitely agree with you that all tops are brats. We've just decided how to do it in the least painful way with the least
Exactly. We're like,
the least amount
okay,
of damage.
we can both be bratty, but I'm holding the stick. Okay, that's what's happening. You can brat me, but don't worry, I'm gonna brat you back. And guess what? I'm holding an acrylic cane in the shape of an icicle. So I think I have a little bit of a upper hand here.
I love that. I definitely think all tops are brats. I just think that we are alpha brats, and we've found a way to make sure that we come out with the least amount of injuries.
That's it. Also, I think it's important to mention that all kinksters really are just like recovering theater kids. We're recovering theater kids, recovering gifted and talented education program kids. Like,
I love that.
I don't have any official data on this, but I know what I'm talking about.
I think you mentioned earlier that that kink is a sport, and I do think that there is a little bit more to discuss there, because I think that we're playing with the same way we do in sport. We're playing with all of this biochemistry, so that if you look at kink a little bit like a sport, and you look at the aftercare and self-care that you need to go into putting into a sport and putting into yourself, I think it makes kink quite a healthy experience. So I really, you're probably the only person that every time I mention to somebody that kink is a sport, they shut me down and tell me that that's totally irrational. But I think that kink can be quite a good self-care model if you look at it like a sport, because then you're training a little bit, you're putting some time into your preparation, you're putting some effort into yourself as the athlete, then you're coming to the table, you're having the experience, and you're going back and you're looking after yourself as an athlete. So I do think there's I know we were joking about it, but I really related to that quite a bit.
Absolutely. I think an important thing to remember as well, this is where I start getting a little more serious, is that when we're speaking of kink being a sport, right? Usually when you're playing a sport, you also have a position on a team or something like that. Like you have something that you really focus on. And I think it's important to mention that practicing your role and being part of your role and really emphasizing what that means to you and what part of your soul and heart and spirit that feeds, I think is so valuable and so important. And I think it's a lot like how an athlete sees their sport. This is what I do because this is what makes me great. This is what makes me happy. This is what makes me feel alive and feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. And I think kink can be that for a lot of people.
I love that.
Because it was for me.
Yeah, I completely relate to you on that. It still is for me. And preparing my canvas or preparing myself to participate in a team sport is empowering. And showing up well is empowering. And being able to hold my position well is empowering. The other thing that I have decided with fire is I have a new understanding of personal responsibility, because there's nothing like an open flame to encourage you to take your role very fucking seriously, and also to identify your role before you start, and to have complete clarity on that role. And I think in the beginning, for me, because I'm a needle top and I'm so controlling in the dungeon that I don't give enough responsibility to my bottoms. But I think fire is one of those things that encourages everybody in the room to take a complete personal responsibility. So going back to negotiations and really identifying where you fit in, what your role is in the situation, and then clarifying communication leads to just really enriching and better scenes.
100%.
I think up until now as a Sharps top, I've taken the personal responsibility for the space. But I think with fire, once that flame is lit, everybody has to have the same personal responsibility. And it's been interesting because I've really had to share the responsibility. I'm not great at sharing anything. That's not my top kink. And, just making sure that everybody is showing up with the same mental attitude is super important. I think fire is a different risk profile to even something like Sharps.
Oh, absolutely. And do you know what's actually really funny? I love that you're talking about specifically fire. So when I was first coming into the kink scene, I know this is a little off. My biggest thing that I wanted to know more about, learn more about, be passionate about, and specifically do was fire play. And so that was the thing that actually kicked me into the scene, was because there was a workshop on fire play. And it's so funny how fire speaks to people. There is something about it. It's the power. It's the entirety of being able to have fire consume something that is actually very inspiring to a lot of people. And I think that really falls into kink. It's that consumption of true and total freedom for ourselves.
I think it's also a force that is just so much greater than everybody in the room. And the one thing that I love about fire is how everybody's fucking present immediately.
Absolutely.
We've got quite a good group that we've played with for a number of years, and it can be chaos. It can be a bag of cats. And because they all know their role, everybody's generally super relaxed, but doing their job quite well. There's a different sense when you light that first flame in the room. Everybody is on board and present and connected, and even the guys with the most ADHD are 100% focused. So it creates this incredible focus because there is a respect for it. And I found that I found that the room went silent, which doesn't happen often in my dungeon. The room just went silent, and everybody was focused on one point. It was great. I think I should take that into meetings, because then maybe my team in the vanilla world would be more focused. Nothing like setting the dustbin on
that's how
fire.
we do it. We start all of our Zoom meetings around here with sparklers. Get used to it, everybody. Get excited. We're pumped for marketing.
Nothing like a bit of flash cotton on the boardroom table to get everyone's attention before you start talking about finance.
Listen, we all love razzle dazzle. That's how that works.
Oh dear. We're really excited about your class, ladies, and I'm really grateful for you chatting to us, and we look forward to seeing you at Renify. Do you want to tell me a bit about your candle shop before I end the podcast?
Absolutely. Chain links.
Yeah, so we sell candles. We sell both jewel tone and UV candles in a variety of different colors and a couple of different sizes. Very reasonable prices. We're shipping to both Canada and the US. Negotiable thereafter, although we all know what shipping prices look like. All our website is working on being put up, but we can certainly be reached by PM in the meantime, and we respond really, really fast because I am obsessive. So do send us a PM. And our website will be up within the week, I'm thinking. So we can do online orders at your convenience. Thank you so much.
And one thing I actually wanted to mention, because we actually didn't really touch on this today during our conversation, which was one of the big things that we really were focused on in making a wax company was equity in play. And so we should let you know that because of the way that we color our candles show up on every skin tone from the lightest there is to the darkest there is. So we have tested it. We spent months testing it to make sure that everybody can play, because everybody deserves to.
I love that. I think that's really important. And I love that you're considering different skin types. I found when I entered the community that my first workshop that I went to was an impact workshop. And I was quite offended because the woman was kind of like, yes, when the skin goes pink, then it's had enough impact. And I was like, well, what happens when the skin doesn't go pink, or you can't see pink on the skin? So how do we learn to work with skin as a medium without judging it by color?
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. Because I think it's important, especially as myself, who falls more into that line of being a very Caucasian person, being a blonde, gray-eyed person. I used to really appreciate marks, but upon further reflection, I realized that pursuit of marks is actually kind of antithetical to what I'm doing, because not everybody marks, and it is inherently a race-based idea and an ableist idea, and also, more importantly, a fat-phobic idea. I won't say most importantly, I'm so sorry, but a fat-phobic idea as well. So the pursuit of marks is not the pursuit of kink. I think kink can be brutal and amazing, and marks, you can have them or you can't, but either way, man, kink is great.
And I also think that we have this amazing canvas that covers our body and that you can stretch out and fill a doorway, and this organ that provides us with all this pleasure, and that we don't spend enough time getting to know the quality and the quantities of what this organ can provide us from a pleasure point of view. And there's so many sort of micro reactions in skin, and we miss all of that just looking for the mark. So, just the way skin feels, the way skin raises temperature, so we now teach our impact class with a blindfold, so that you are learning to spank somebody with your hand. I won't give a blinded person a paddle, I promise, but that you're learning to spank the skin, and then you're learning to feel what the touch of that spank feels like on the skin. So just the skin's reaction to the hair standing up, the way that it automatically increases temperature, and you can feel the area, the way that the area spreads, and how much, just the whole body's actual reaction, just being present with the skin as an organ, and then learning to care for that organ, because the canvas is the most beautiful thing we have, and we can create all of this art on it, but we need to learn how to take care of that. And we also need to learn to listen to that in more ways than just reacting to a big purple mark on the bum. And I had the same experience in the beginning, it was all about the marks. And I don't bruise super easily, so you really had to hit me super hard in the beginning. And I was sort of wore them proudly-ish because it was accepted in the community, but now that's not the experience that ticks my box. The experience that ticks my box is being present with my body, and also being able to understand what's happening to my body when it happens. So, I think...
And I find it so interesting that you're talking about that. We're now just going on, you and I, we're just having a nice date. That's what's happening. So we're just chatting. Because what I was going to say is it's interesting, because for a top with the classes that I teach in Impact specifically is I always tell people the greatest tool you have in your possession is it came with you today, which is your human body. You don't need to buy all your tools. You already have tools. They're your hands, they're your feet, your knees, your elbows. Headbutt someone, do whatever, like safely, politely with a friendo, but
with consent.
Well, that is a big part of it, yes, but that goes without saying, everyone. But it's amazing because when we put the focus of the body enjoying ahead of the body looking like it experienced, I think you also just have scenes that are 10,000 times more powerful.
Yeah, and I think you're more connected to your bottom if you're concentrating on what is happening and the micro responses instead of looking for the macro marks. And I think the focus needs to be on every touch has an effect and harm carries. So what are you putting in? What is the intent going into it? How are you enjoying the response? And the little responses need to be rewarded. I think we always reward the big things in life, and I think we miss a whole bunch of stuff. Like everything passes us by, if that's our philosophy. So just being really appreciative that even the little response of the hair standing up from one spank is a beautiful thing. You got that response from somebody else's body, and enjoy it, feel it, touch it. Remember what that feeling feels like. And I think if you can do that, you can then work with any skin color. It doesn't matter because you're not looking for the big purple mark or for the red glow. And I think that's super important. I think we need to remember that. That is more important for me anyway.
And I think the focus on marks has been a bit of a deterrent for people in the past to coming into a space where they're like, well, I don't do that. I can't do that. My skin doesn't do that. And I think maybe kind of demystifying our feelings about that and trying to focus and hold ourselves accountable to our feelings on that is a positive, because I think it's going to open a lot of doors for people to say, oh, okay, cool. So this is a technique. You do it this way because it works. And guess what? You can communicate with your bottom. It doesn't always have to be, oh, this portion of them turned pink. How about we're learning something new together and we're using plain old English and they tell me, I liked that or I didn't. That's enough for me.
Yeah. And how about we judge the scene on how happy the other person was, not how many marks we left on them.
Well, and how happy you were. Remember?
Yeah.
That's a big part of it too, right? That's why I was saying it's a sport. We're just 2 players playing together.
I love that. I think we could date quite happily. So yeah.
I know. I'm gonna have to figure out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to figure this out.
Logistics for this, but I think that we get on super well. We might be highly competitive.
I love making new friends, so this was lovely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed chatting to you guys. I'm so looking forward to a class. I'm so looking forward to learn to paint with wax and to do some really fun wax things and to do them safely and to have some fun doing them. So thanks, ladies, for joining me. I'm going to drop your links into the bio for this podcast. So if anybody wants to reach out and contact you for wax, they can do that.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it so much, especially as a small business here.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Support your fellow Kinksters. We're all trying to do the best, and we're all doing it with great intent. And it's lovely to hear about how much research has gone into your wax and your product, and how much joy you get from using it personally. I think that's super important.
Thank you so much.
And to all my listeners, I hope you got your Rain of Fire tickets. If you don't, what are you doing with your lives? Do it. Do it now. If you need a scholarship ticket, we still have scholarships available. Please reach out to our team via DM. We're happy to answer you. We want education to be for everybody. Price shouldn't be a barrier. We have our on-demand classes starting on the 1st of July. We're really excited. Our admin team's working super hard. I know my beautiful Solaris is is working night and day to get some really good videos up for you guys. I have some lovely classes still to come before the end of June. So if you have a Rent a Blood ticket, you're welcome to come to the live classes or just catch them on demand from the 1st of July. And then we have our full schedule out. We have some incredible educators. Please love them. Show them some love on FetLife. Please give them a follow. And please support your local kink vendors that make these beautiful products. And from my dungeon at 2 a.m. in Africa, lots of love and kitten kisses.